Hello everyone, and welcome to our discussion on processing your credit card reconciliations in Design Manager. My name is Brad, and I'll be hosting the demonstration today. If you have questions during the webinar, feel free to enter them into the questions pane under GoToWebinar panel. If the question is outside of the scope of today's discussion, please email them to support@designmanager.com. And lastly, if you miss a portion of the webinar or want to review any of our past discussions, go to our YouTube channel at Design Manager Inc., Design Manager INC. And here you can see all sorts of topics, such as our quick start videos, short helpful tutorials, and our more comprehensive webinars that we organize into project management and accounting courses, along with all of our other weekly webinars as well. Okay, today we'll be discussing how to use credit card reconciliation feature in Design Manager, focusing on the standard functionality. I'm going to show some convenient features, and then I'll quickly review some common errors as well. We will not, however, be discussing entering vendor invoices, operating expenses, etc. that are paid via your credit card, as those topics are covered in detail in our Setting Up and Using Credit Cards webinar, which again you can see at our YouTube channel at your leisure. Okay, let's get started. Now, if you're using Design Manager to maintain your accounting and provide reporting to your accounting professional for taxes, etc., one of the most important tasks is to ensure that your balances are correct, obviously, with all of your financial institutions, including your credit card providers. Doing so will, in turn, ensure that your expenses and other purchases are recorded, along with verifying that payments have been sent, and having all of that done, and your expenses being entered, allows you to bill your clients for reimbursables. You can analyze areas of high expenditures. You can record the proper tax liability, etc. The overall concept of reconciling your credit cards is the exact same as reviewing your personal credit card account. It's just a matter of comparing which transactions are shown to be processed through the credit card provider versus what's being shown on Design Manager's credit card register. Just like you would review your receipts for personal purchases versus what's shown on your credit card statement that you receive from your credit card provider. The credit card reconciliation is tied to all of the entries in the credit card window, which we access from our accounting tab under our accounts payable frame, and we click credit cards and reconcile. The reconciliation is going to show all of the entries for the selected credit card account, which have a date up to and including the statement ending date on the statement, and the entry has not been cleared on a prior reconciliation, obviously. Now, I've created a fictional credit card statement for our discussion purposes, which we'll refer to frequently. And there it is. To begin the reconciliation process, like I said, we go to our credit card window, and now we're going to click the Reconcile button in the top right corner. Your Pro Cloud is going to automatically default the credit card account from the one selected on the credit cards window, but you could of course change that as needed. From here, we already have a few features, including our History button. The History button brings us up to our credit card reconciliation history window, where we can go ahead and do functions such as reprinting past credit card reconciliations. Perhaps your accounting professional might need one, or you just forgot to print out a copy that you want for yourself. You can do so here. So I could go ahead, highlight the desired reconciliation, click the reprint button, and there we go. I can print out an exact copy of a previous reconciliation. Another feature of the credit card reconciliation history window is the ability to delete, or let's say undo, a previous reconciliation. So perhaps I realized that I reconciled in error, and I found the error and I wanted to re-reconcile properly. I could go ahead and delete the reconciliation, make my changes, and then re-reconcile. Now, if I realized that my error was back in many months back, I'd have to delete each prior reconciliation, make my adjustments, and then reconcile all of them. Okay, so to begin, we've already have our credit card account selected for us, as I mentioned. Now we need to enter the statement ending date and the ending balance, both of which are going to obviously be found on the credit card statement itself. So we can see Our statement ending date is 3/31, and our balance is 8,053.66. So we can go ahead and input those. Let's go put end of March, and then we have 8053.66. Click Start, and we're ready to go. Again, all entries with a date up to and including our statement ending date are going to be shown, again, assuming that they have not been included on a previous reconciliation. And you can actually see in your credit card window, if we look back a few months, all of these transactions are already cleared. Again, hence why they're not showing on our current reconciliation. Another convenient feature in your Pro Cloud is that the statement ending date and the balance are going to be stored for you. Let's imagine that you're working on a lengthy reconciliation and you have other tasks to attend to. You can go ahead and close your reconciliation windows, even close your design manager and come back later or even tomorrow and get right back into your reconciliation, and your information is stored for you. Plus, any transaction that you've already cleared or analyzed will be saved as well. Very convenient. You can also sort by and search on a variety of the columns on your Reconcile credit card window. You could sort by date, obviously. You could sort by vendor code. If I want to jump down to Verizon, I could sort by vendor name, Century, even the invoice number. If I go to website, in fact, I could even search on an amount. I'm trying to find a particular value, $12.50, just like that, I can jump down to it. So the window itself allows you to easily track down information or transactions that you're looking for and just view the window in any format that you would like. Okay. Another extremely helpful feature in Pro Cloud is the dynamic reconciliation status along the right-hand side. As we proceed through the reconciliation process, we can immediately monitor how close we are to successfully completing the project, as our difference will hopefully approach to zero. Let's see the information listed for us. At the top, we have the statement balance and the ending date, which of course we just entered. Next, we're going to have the addition of any outstanding charges, basically all of our uncleared transactions in our reconciliation grid. And if we go ahead and clear one as an example, you can see that value is going to decrease by the amount of the cleared transaction. Next, we're going to have the subtraction or the reduction of any uncleared payments to the credit card provider. So there's a single payment of $500, which is being listed for us. Again, if I clear that, that value would drop to zero as it's the only payment on there. Next is the balance. That's basically the running reconciliation balance as calculated by when we clear our charges and our payments in transit. Finally, we show the computer balance or design manager's balance as of 3/31. We can even see that right on our credit card window. If we look at the bottom of our American Express March, $7,532.77. That's exactly what we're displaying on our Reconcile credit card window as well. And of course, the difference is going to be the balance less the computer balance. Basically, how far off are we between our reconciliation? Okay, now let's begin the basic reconciliation process by cross-referencing all the entries on the statement to what's being displayed in Design Manager. And there are a few features that make the process as fast as possible, notably the clear feature. The little button with the check mark is our clear button. And if we click upon it, we get to the clear credit card charges payments window. This is an extremely quick way to mark certain transactions or even all transactions as cleared or uncleared. Some users of Design Manager actually will clear all of the transactions and then easily uncheck the ones that are not on the statement. Particularly handy if the way you're recording your charges, most of them are, or the majority of them are going to be cleared. It's a lot easier to clear them all and just unclear a few. As an example, we can go ahead, leave our clear option selected, and if I just click OK, Design Manager will first warn me. It's always going to alert you that you're going to be clearing all of the transactions, really because you don't want to inadvertently disrupt a reconciliation. So if we're sure we're going to clear all of our transactions, we click yes, and just like that, they're all cleared. And as you would imagine, the outstanding charges and payments in transit, of course, both go to zero. If that was done in error, no problem. Click our clear button again, and we can go ahead and unclear. Warned again, of course, and we're right back to where we began. You can also use a date range. Perhaps you're looking at your statement week by week, and you want to say, okay, everything within the first week is cleared. Could absolutely do that. I could put in, let's say, 228 through perhaps 37, clear them, and everything data within that range is now cleared for us. And then I can begin reviewing the next week. We could also use an amount in our clear. Very handy. Perhaps you have a voluminous credit card statement and there's many entries listed on our credit card reconcile window. I'm trying to find, let's say, a value of $370.50. Just type that amount in. Design Manager will review all the transactions, and lo and behold, it's going to track down our $370.50 for current calls, workroom, and clear it for us. Okay, now the clear function, very handy, but we're going to go and do our reconciliation process manually so we can really examine the process in detail. Further, I like to physically mark my statement as I'm processing the reconciliation, and I'm going to simulate that by using the highlighter feature in our Adobe. Okay, so let's take a look at our statement, and we'll go right down from the beginning. The first we can see is our payment received of $500. Well, we already noticed that we have our transaction on there, so I can go ahead and clear, and on our statement, I can mark that as completed. Next, let's look at the ones that are all fairly simple. Curtain Calls Workroom, America's Mattress, Baker, Best Way, and Verizon. All of those match perfectly, so we can go ahead, write down the list of our vendors. And you can see my outstanding charges is reducing, as is the difference. Next, we have Verizon, our monthly Verizon bill at $199. We can clear that as well. Okay. Now, let's see some of the other transactions we have. Well, we have iConnection, which handles a lot of our website and IT infrastructure, and they have a charge for, we can also mark all of these as done too, so we know exactly where we are. Perfect. So back to iConnection, we have a single charge for $419.99. But on our Reconcile credit card window, we see two transactions, one for $400 and one for $19.99. Well, let's imagine that one's for our monthly website fee and one's for some changes we had done to the website. iConnection may have simply put them both through as a single MX transaction. Absolutely fine. Now, two transactions, very simple. I'm sure we can do the math together, but if it's multiple transactions and the vendor only charged you one time for all of them, or perhaps they charged three different transactions or payments for 10 different invoices, doing the math may be a little bit tedious. So you can use Design Manager's sum feature in these cases. This is a very simple example, and we can see my column next to the clear is for summing. And if I select our first entry for iConnection for $400, my total region for my summed transactions first shows us the total selected amount and the number of transactions right beneath the label of sum. Go ahead and select the next one. We can see that two transactions are selected for our summing and the entire value of $419.99. Perfect. That's what matches our statement. Now, from here, once we have found our transactions and it's now matching our statement perfectly, we can use the clear function, and it's going to clear all of the summed entries for us. If I did that in error and notice that I need to take one off or add one or what have you, I can unclear as well, which will take the cleared off of our summed entries. But if we're happy with our transactions, I can clear them And then I can use the clear summed or zero out summed, and it removes the summed column for us in case I need to do the same procedure for a different vendor. So we have our iConnection transaction completed, and we can mark that as finished as well. Now, let's see. Staples is next for $45 on our statement. In our reconcile credit card window, we have an entry for office or office supplies as a generic vendor for $45. Now, obviously, I've created a single vendor for any office expense, so I don't have to create a vendor for Staples, Office Max, etc. The same can be done for meals, transportation, etc. So any office charges or office supplies that I need to put through, I just use my generic vendor of office, and lo and behold, I can match it up to any vendor I need to. So $45 on our reconcile window, $45 for Staples on our statement, and we're ready to clear. And we can mark that off as well. Now, we're getting close to having most of our entries cleared, but there still seems to be a few transactions on the statement that we don't see on our Design Manager reconcile window. First off, we have a charge for Maxwell's on Main, a local restaurant, and another one for Monk's, another restaurant. I don't have either of those transactions listed. So as I'm going through my reconciliation process, I can see it's not added into Design Manager, so I can go ahead and do so. So let's go ahead and put in our charges that we've simply forgot to do prior. We go to our accounting, bills and invoices. We're going to add this as an operating expense. We'll back our fiscal month up to the prior. Click add. Type, as I said, is going to be an expense. The vendor, just like our office supplies vendors, I've created a meals and entertainment vendor as well. Invoice, how about March meals, 2 entries. The invoice date, just put that at the end of the month. We don't have to separate each one. I'll use the same as the transaction description. And I click my add button as indicated by the green plus sign to get to my vendor distribution, and my account number is already populated for me. How'd that happen? Well, if we look at our vendor glossary and we go down to our meals and entertainment vendor, on our vendor window, if we go to the defaults tab, I've already associated the exact account that I want to use always with my meals and entertainment charges in the expense account. So I don't need to remember to use that 64-100 expense account. By having it set as my default expense account on the vendor window, it's automatically going to populate for me. Keeps all of my entries consistent and takes a little the guesswork out of it. And I'm going to go ahead and put in the total of those 2 meals, $445.75. Obviously, this was paid with American Express. Check all my work, looks fantastic. Click OK, and I'll post. And just like that, we already have the transactions listed for us. Again, I'm not concerned what day those 2 particular meals were on. I just want the entire value. You could add them individually if you wanted to, entirely up to you. But we'll go ahead and clear, and we can mark off our meals on our statement as well. Okay, now we're down to Century Furniture for $2,800. Well, we do have a listing for Century, but we're off by $20. So we need to research this transaction a little bit more. And if I go and truly see the vendor invoice that I received from the vendor, I can see perhaps that the freight for one of the components was higher than originally thought, and was or perhaps was simply put into Design Manager incorrectly. It doesn't really matter. It needs to get corrected. Now, there's 2 additional features that help this situation. One, I could view all of the accounts and even the components themselves by using the details button. So if we take a look at perhaps our phone bill, and I click the button with the binoculars, that's going to take us to our vendor invoice detail window. And I can see the exact accounts in that particular operating expense. And with our Century Furniture example, back to our details, not only do I see the accounts, in our top grid, I can even see the components affected as well. Very convenient. I can even add notes from here as well. I might want to go ahead and put in today's date, entered proper freight cost, so I know what is transpiring. Another feature from here that's very convenient is the Go To button. So I could highlight our transaction in question, click the arrow button, which is the Go To entry, and it's going to take me right to our vendor invoices, deposits, and operating expenses window, existing tab, and positioned to the transaction in question. I know that I need to make an edit to it, so I can go down, click my edit button. Notice that the freight for component 1 is 80, and it actually should be 100, no problem. Click the edit button again, change our freight cost to 100. That changes the cost of the freight itself and the total amount due. Click OK. Can close our vendor invoice window. And again, instantaneously, that update is being reflected on our reconcile credit card window as well. And now that I've succeeded to getting to the 2,800, I can clear, and I can mark that as reconciled as well. Now notice, you may have hundreds, maybe several hundreds of transactions on the credit card statement per month. Obviously, your credit card window might start getting very crowded, and it's becoming difficult to focus on what's cleared or not cleared. There's another feature in Design Manager that can really simplify the number of transactions that you want to review. You can go ahead and use the suppress cleared charges option. What this will do is, let's say, hide any transactions that we've previously cleared. In other words, we've successfully reconciled those transactions. They are all to our liking. And now we can focus on only the ones that have not yet been cleared, really keeping our list as tidy and as manageable as possible. If you want to go see them again, you can just unsuppress so they come back. So you could suppress them, reconcile some other transactions and clear them, hit the suppress again, and keep it very manageable. So very handy and somewhat underutilized feature as well. Okay, now back to our statement. So we're down to Philip Jeffries is giving us a credit of $40. Again, we don't see that listed in our reconcile credit card window. So that amount perhaps, again, was not entered, simply hasn't been processed, what have you. But we need to get it into our Design Manager. Quickest way to enter a credit, in my opinion, is to use the vendor returns and credits window, which is accessed from your accounting tab again under your accounts payable, and click the returns and credits button. That gets us to our vendor returns and credits window, and all we really have to do here is tell Design Manager what happened in reality. Well, the credit type was a refund on our credit card, of course, and our credit card's automatically selected. If you had multiple credit cards, just pick the right one, of course. The credit refund for, well, that was an invoice for a project PO. And in this case, looking back at our notes, it was for purchase order CAR 010005. So we'll put in our Carter's project. The PO number, as I said, was CAR 0105 for Philip Jeffries. There it is. Credit card is perfect. Design Manager defaults the vendor for us. The date, let's go ahead and make that match perfectly. So that was on March 26. Remember, in Design Manager, for the any transactions in the current year, to enter as fast as possible, just type the month, space date. You can leave the year off, and once you tab out, Design Manager will reformat it for you. We'll back the fiscal month up. Description, how about something like refund for freight? The amount was $40, remember? When using the returns and credits window, you always want to enter the values as positive values. So don't put a -40 in there, in other words. And if we go ahead and click OK, we'll be prompted to process. Click OK again. And now we're asked to designate, what is this $40 applying to? So that actually brings us back to our familiar vendor invoice window. Proper purchase order is positioned for us. The design manager is defaulting the invoice date, the vendor. It's making an invoice number of refund. Transaction description is coming along as well. And if we go ahead and indicate that the freight was refunded, I'm going to click our pencil icon again, which is the edit button. And now I want to put in a minus. This is where I'm indicating the refund itself, and I am using a negative value. Click OK. Design Manager's also selected the credit card for us because it was on our credit card of our returns and credits window. Click OK. And Design Manager has processed the refund for us successfully. Close that, and once again, Design Manager's automatically updated our credit card window, our reconcile credit card window as well. And we can go ahead and clear. Very convenient feature. For more information on vendor returns and credits, check out our webinar, Advanced Accounting for Vendor Returns and Credits, where we go into many examples, such as the one I just provided. Okay, so we have our credit selected, and we can clear our Philip Jeffries entry as well. Getting very close. Next, we have our credit card renewal fee. That has not yet been input into Design Manager either. And we also have our interest. Basically, both charges from American Express, one for the annual fee and one for interest on our previous balance. How do we enter those? Well, for the fee, the renewal fee, I'm going to enter that as an operating expense. There's a few ways we could do it. This is the one I prefer because it actually ties the fee itself to our American Express vendor that represents the credit card processor themselves. So on our accounting tab, back to bills and invoices, back up our fiscal month, click our add button. Again, this is going to be an expense. The vendor is going to be American Express. Invoice number could just be renewal fee. Can use my spell check. On our transaction description, no spelling errors found. Perfect. Invoice date, that was on 31st for both the fee and the interest, so we'll use 3/31. Click our add button to get to our vendor invoice distribution. Now, defaulting from our American Express vendor is our American Express credit card liability account, because usually I want to simply pay American Express the balance and I want to reduce my credit card liability. But in this case, that's not the account I want to use. I want to use some expense account representing a service charge. So I have a bank or credit card service charge expense account 63,100. Perfect for such a charge. And this would be our $50. Click OK. Clearly, I'm not paying this with a check. Why? It's on my American Express statement. So my pay with would also be American Express in this case. So the vendor is Amex. The account for the fee is some expense account, in our case 63,100 bank credit card service charges, and yet it was actually paid or charged to our American Express liability credit card account. Click OK and go ahead and post. Back on our reconciliation window, make that a little bit bigger now, and we can see our renewal fee listed for us, tied to our Amex vendor, etc. Go ahead and clear, and we are very close. So lastly, we have our interest. Yes, I absolutely could have recorded that with our renewal fee to some perhaps interest account, or even to that credit card service charges account as well. But we can also use our finance charge option in the bottom of our reconciliation window. So if we click the edit button, that brings us to our service finance charges. A description is listed for us. I could change that. It actually says service finance charges abbreviated and has the statement ending date there for us. And if we click the add button, looks very similar to our previous account distribution window on our uh, um, operating expense example. So we'll go ahead and put in the same account, and could have a different one. I may have an interest account if desired, and put in the amount properly, 6214, 6214, perfect, and we are good to go. What that does is it actually separates the finance charge as a sort of stylized expense for us, and it lists it for us right on our reconciliation window with the invoice number of finance charges for us, and even clears it. So notice, just by entering that, we can see that our credit card statement matches. The only transaction that we have on our reconciliation window was a charge for some taxi service that simply has not yet been cleared through Amex. And we can see, we know that our reconciliation is proper because Design Manager is alerting us with the green credit card statement balances versus our difference being shown. And we can even review all of our information against our statement. What do I mean? Well, let's take a look. We have total clear charges of $7,355.24. And our statement says new charges, $7,305.24, but the fee is separated. And in our case, the fee is being included for our renewal. So that's the sum of those two. Perfect. We also see our total cleared payments of $500, and we can see payments and credits has $540. What's the 40 for? It's actually for the refund that's listed here as well. They're just displaying it a bit differently, and these are the things that you will notice from credit card company to credit card company. But the net is perfect. Now we can go ahead and print our reconciliation. We have the option to show in cleared items or not. If I'm going to make a copy of our reconciliation for my future taxes, I generally would suggest to do so. That way we can see what's been cleared, what's not been cleared, etc. So we can see our taxi outstanding charge. We have no payments in transit. We can see our calculated balance and computer balance match, as we know, and we can see all of our previously cleared charges and payments. Lastly, all we have to do is go ahead and accept. Design Manager again is going to warn us that we want to process the reconciliation, and by clicking yes here, we're going to set all of our charges as cleared and get ready for our next reconciliation in the future month. And if we close our reconciliation window, you can see automatically all of those charges are cleared for us. Fantastic. That is the reconciliation process from beginning all the way to the end. Now, let's review some of the most common errors that may make the reconciliation process a bit more challenging, or errors that could perhaps throw off the reconciliation and create transactions that can't be reconciled. By far, most commonly, and simply the wrong date has been entered, the wrong amount, etc. Let's go ahead and go through an example of inputting a parking receipt that we used on our American Express. So I'd go ahead and to my bills and invoices under accounts payable. I'd add a new one, expense as we saw before, and I have that taxi and parking vendor. Perfect. We could say this was parking 331. Put that back last month. Transaction description is the same. We'll click our add button, and foolishly, I didn't associate an expense account with my taxi and parking, so I need to input one manually. Well, I might simply say, I paid for this on my American Express, so I'm going to go ahead and use my American Express account. Fantastic. $25. Pay with, well, I didn't pay with a check, so I'll select American Express here. Go ahead, let's back that up and post. Now, back on our credit card window, we can see end of March, There's our taxi and parking. We can see our balance of March is $8,095.66. Great. Going to April. Whoa, $8,070.66. If 1 month's ending balance does not match the next month's beginning balance, that is a clear indication something was entered incorrectly. In this case, it's off by $25. Could even put a transaction search, track down that $25. Here's our American Express. And what we've done here, let's edit our transaction. We can see, yes, I'm paying with our American Express, but I'm charging it to American Express as well. Basically, I'm debiting one account and crediting the same account. Net effect is going to be 0. Our transaction detail is not American Express. When we're entering in our operating expense, we want to ask ourselves, what was I actually purchasing, or what was the charge for? It wasn't for American Express. It was for travel and transportation. Now we update our account distribution. Yes, it was paid with American Express. That's fantastic. And if we go back to our credit card window, we can see the end of March is $8,095.66, as is the beginning balance. That transaction absolutely would have come up incorrectly in our reconciliation. Here's another example. What if we can't find a payment that we made to American Express? Our tech support team gets this all the time. Let's go through this example. So we're going to pay American Express for our balance due or a portion thereof. Back on our vendor invoice operating expense deposit window, go ahead and add. Type is going to be expense. We're going to go ahead and select our Amex card vendor invoice. That would be have a March 2009 balance. Invoice date 3/31. We'll use the same invoice number as our transaction description. We have our American Express account listed. Perfect. And let's say we paid $1,000. Click OK. OK again. And back that up to March and post. Look over on our credit card window. I don't see, there's our refund. I don't see our payment of $1,000. Nor would I see it in nor do I see it on our reconciliation window. The problem is the vendor that I just paid, which was AX for Amex card, is not the vendor associated on our account glossary with our American Express account. That is our Amex, AMEX vendor as the credit card payee. For payments to the vendor, the credit card vendor must be the same. The vendor used on the operating expense to pay the vendor has to be the same one listed in the account. In our case, they were different, as we can see on our existing vendor invoice, and it's not going to appear. Easy to fix, of course. You can simply edit and put in the proper American Express, and we'd be good to go. Very common mistake as well. Lastly, quite frequently, we're going to get questions, I can't find a particular transaction. I know I put it in. Let's say we went and had a lunch with a client, wanted to put in that transaction. We can use our meals vendor again. Lunch with a client, perhaps on 4/5. Conveniently, our meals and entertainment is put in there for us. Let's say it was $45.17. Okay, great. We're have our Amex charge, and we post that off. Now I go over to our credit card window, American Express 45. I don't see that charge at all. Well, because when I entered it, I didn't select my American Express account. Sounds trivial, happens quite frequently. So it's listed as a check is going to be needed to be printed for it. I can easily fix that mistake as well. I can just select the entry and say that was actually on a credit card. Instead, make our payment date same as our transaction date, and we can easily print our payment list. It drops off of our bills to be paid listing, and we can now see it over on our credit card window. Very common. Simply didn't select the American Express as the method of payment. All three of which, these examples, very common, simple pitfalls, but easy to make mistakes, yet Design Manager is flexible enough to make the corrections quite easily as well. And with that, that brings us to our end of our discussion on our credit card reconciliation process today, where I tried to point out some of the lesser known features, some of the advanced features in the professional cloud reconciliation process, went over some of the common errors or pitfalls to beware of. Remember, reconciling your credit card account is critical to maintaining proper accounting records. If you do so each month, all of the information of those transactions is fresh in your mind, so it can be reviewed most easily. With that, I thank you all for joining today's discussion, and I hope you attend another of our free webinars in the near future. Take care and have a great day.